Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. Welcome today. Today we'll be here with FlyOnE and discussing their upcoming raise, their crowdsource funding raise on Birchal. My name's Eva. I'm part of the campaigns team here at Birchal. Very soon I'll be introducing you to Coram Ellis, he's the CEO, and Joshua Portlock, the co-director, both at FlyOnE. They're here to tell you about a very exciting investment opportunity and answer all of your questions. Before I do, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm streaming in from. Birchal's based on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Birchal's working with Coram and Josh and their team at FlyOnE on their upcoming crowdfunding offer. Crowdsource funding, also known as equity crowdfunding, is a form of fundraising in Australia that allows growing businesses to raise capital from a large number of investors through an online platform such as Birchal. This enables FlyOnE to raise funds from their community and the public at large in exchange for equity in their business. Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for this raise. The information and discussion in this webinar is for informational purposes and should not be considered as advice or a recommendation to invest. Please do your own research. Always consider the offer document, which will be available next week, and the general risk warning before investing. More information is available on our website at birchal.com. Now over to how today will run. I'll give a brief overview and then we'll jump right in. So in just a moment, Coram and Josh will kick off and give a presentation on FlyOnE, and that will be followed by an audience Q&A. I can see someone has raised their hand. We'll actually be submitting questions via the chat. So to submit a question, just look at the bottom of your screen. There'll be a little Q&A bubble. Please pop it in the Q&A box. And as we go along, we'll be gathering those questions. And then after the presentation, there'll be a chance to ask these questions to Coram and Josh, and they're looking forward to answering all of your questions. Now, we are recording today's session, so if you do have to jump off early, there will be a recording that will be sent around afterwards. Now, without further ado, I will hand straight over to Coram and Josh, and they'll tell you more about FlyOnE and this exciting opportunity. So over to you guys.
Well, good morning, guys and girls. Thank you very much for joining us today. Again, thank you, Eva, for the warm intro. My name is Coram E., founder of FlyOnE, a rapidly growing company dedicated to the modernization of legacy aviation practices and the practical integration of renewable energy sources in general aviation. I have with me today my Chief Technical Advisor and Co-Director, Joshua Portlock. And Josh has no small amount of success in electric aviation, pioneering in the drone space and energy delivery space before assisting with business growth and development with FlyOnE. And he'll give us a good little bit of information on his area of expertise and what he's been working on just very recently after I present a little bit more information to you. Today, I'd like to present a condensed view of our offer document. And I'm just going to play a little video in the background to give you some context while I start talking about this. So the offer document we'll have out very, very soon. We've been working hard on it. It has been a little bit of a headache. There's a lot of detail that goes into it. But the team has been bending over backwards to get that all in order. And we're just about ready to get that out to you. And that'll have a lot of the critical information that you're really going to want to see. So it's quite long. There'll be a lot to digest. But we'll basically just going to skim over the contents today in this presentation and give you a bit of an overview of what we're presenting to the market. I just wanted to say thank you again. We've had a good response, people chipping in today, and we've had heaps of EOIs, and it's actually been quite humbling, and I've actually got a lot of gratitude. You go out there in the market and you take this crazy idea and you push it out there, and you just hope that it's going to have some uptake and that people are going to respond well to what you're working on and what you're passionate about. The response on everything that we've been presenting and all of the work we've been doing in the past few years establishing this market has been overwhelming, and it's nice just to take a moment and appreciate everybody's attention and the investments we've achieved to date and all of the market penetration we've achieved to date. So thank you for that, and thank you for getting in on this webinar to learn some more. I'm going to read my little condensed version of the founder letter because I wanted to put that across and get some of the passion into those words from the horse's mouth, so to speak. The modern world is growing at an alarming rate. In my short lifetime, I've seen over 3 billion additional people join us on this crazy space rock. As one who enjoys and embraces the natural world, I'm personally invested in protecting the natural beauty and brilliance of our lonely planet. The gift of human flight is it's a truly astounding achievement and a magnificent human experience, one that I would like more people to have access to. In aviation, I saw an opportunity to help transition an industrial age industry beyond the information age, to continue exploring and enjoying the gift of flight with responsible and renewable sources of energy and sustainable practices to make this gift accessible to more people than ever before. As it turns out, convenient, sustainable, accessible air transport solutions have a pretty good ROI potential as well. Getting into our fine team. Our small but powerful team is the heart and soul of FlyOnE. Their support and alignment with the goals that I mentioned just now have been integral to our success and will always be the foundation that spurs the growth of our service delivery. I'm confident that with our collective passion and expertise, we will build a legacy that succeeds and grows to sustain these goals long after we are gone. Since the inception and execution of our establishment of the electric aviation market in Australia, we've been able to achieve some significant milestones. I'll throw out another little slide there. Some of those milestones, very briefly summarized on the slide, but I'll give you to them verbally. We've had over 50 electric pilots in training, converted or certified in our electric aircraft trainer fleet in Australia. We've initiated decarbonised air taxi operations to 17 locations across Western Australia and shortly expanding into Victoria. We've had over 1,600 passenger movements in our electric aircraft fleet in Perth and Melbourne. We have 5 active charge nodes in Melbourne and Perth, servicing that electric aircraft fleet now. As we explored, sought, and established various supply chain elements and customer and client sources, we've built the following key value drivers. Built around the market demand and greatest opportunity for the early uptake of electric aviation. FlyOnE is the only electric aircraft operator in Australia and is actively creating an advanced air mobility network. We have operational charge infrastructure, electric pilot training, and pay-per-use aircraft access active now for qualified pilots, and we have people hiring and using the aircraft recreationally and privately. Excuse me, I'll get my next screens going on. Our scalable business model and infrastructure allow us to expand our fleet and services without significant increases in operational complexity or costs. Now that we've built the backbone of the business and have our service delivery mechanism, it's merely a case of scaling that into more regions in Australia. As a pioneer in the electric aviation market, FlyOnE benefits from early entry to the market. We've got it all to ourselves at the moment, which is fantastic. That won't last forever. There's a lot of people entering the space and it's getting a lot of attention because there's massive market opportunity. But right now, we're enjoying all of that market opportunity just to ourselves. We've got exclusive importing rights and strategic partnerships with leading electric aircraft manufacturers such as Pipistrel, Bi Aerospace, Air EV, Electron Aerospace, and more. Some that we can't talk about just yet, but we'll get that information out as soon as a few more things are firmed up. And I'll show you some of those aircraft in some of the upcoming slides shortly. Our diversified services include pilot training, air taxi operations, aircraft sales, and service and maintenance support. This diversification enhances our market resilience and growth potential by providing multiple revenue streams for the business. The FlyOnE Sky Academy offers pilot training programs that are up to 50% cheaper than traditional internal combustion engine aircraft training, with no compromise at all to the learning process for the cadets. So you're essentially learning all the exact same things you would learn in a piston-powered aircraft, just at a fraction of the cost, a fraction of the emissions, of course, and it's actually a much, much nicer learning experience and flying experience. Flying an electric aircraft is much more pleasant than flying a 50-year-old clunker. So our world-exclusive thermal management charge infrastructure which has been something that we've been working on the past few months and makes a big difference for our operations. It meets the local battery temperature management requirements. The initial charge infrastructure we received with our first aircraft was insufficient for Australian summers, particularly in Western Australia, where it's about 1 million degrees. And it compressed our operations considerably, and it started putting our batteries at a risk point for damage. So we had to upgrade and develop and make a new way of charging and a new type of ground handling to help reduce that. We've now maximized our summer ops and protecting the longevity of our batteries with that hardware. Moving on, must be time for just a new slide shortly. At FlyOnE, we are dedicated to transforming the aviation industry through our innovative and sustainable electric aviation solutions. We founded in 2020 and swiftly have established ourselves as leaders in the Australian market for electric aircraft, with greater market penetration and more electric air operation hours than any other electric air operator. Our mission is to significantly reduce the environmental impact of aviation while providing cost-effective, efficient, and quieter alternatives to traditional aircraft. Since our inception, we've achieved some significant milestones that underscore our growth. In 2019, Josh will take responsibility for this one. He did some amazing early work in 2019 and was able to get the first electric aircraft in the world certified for pilot training. And that's we're still using that same aircraft now, the Pipistrel Alpha Electro. So that's a pretty good feather in the cap for Australia in general. The electric aircraft were being manufactured in Slovenia, and Josh was imported the first one and had that certified. So that's literally the first place in the entire world to operate an electric aircraft in a commercial capacity was in Jandakot, Western Australia. So well done, Josh, for that early work, and that opened some doorways to let us sort of really start rolling this out and getting some early market penetration. In 2020, we moved on to importer and brand ambassador rights for that brand, the Pipistrel aircraft, and they have a nice range of upcoming electric aircraft in their pipeline, which we'll continue to grow and support and penetrate the market with. In 2020 to 2024, we spent all of that time on our proof of concept. So we imported more electric aircraft, integrated them to multiple flight schools, and worked really hard on just discovering how electric aircraft will integrate into the existing marketplace for pilot training and the appetite for switching to new renewable energy sources in aviation. And we've learned a lot. It was surprising to see which areas were very positive, which areas were very resistive, and all of that market research that we've been able to do over the past couple of years has really let us fine-tune how we can deliver these products and services to market in the most efficient way. So we've already gone through most of the pain of discovering where our wastage and where our challenges are going to be. So now we can move past those and just focus on what we know works and what we know will happen quickly and safely and profitably. The 2023, we're able to take a lot of the work and experience we'd built in 2020, 21, 22, and secure more aircraft for our own pipeline through some of the leading aircraft manufacturers worldwide. So that's when we integrated the Bi Aerospace aircraft, which we'll show you shortly, and the Air EV and also the Electron 5. We've got pre-orders on all of those aircraft and are excited to bring those to market, some of them very, very soon. 2024 was all about infrastructure development and fleet expansion, and still is. We've ordered some more Pipistrel aircraft again, which we hope to see by the end of the year. The delivery time isn't too bad on those ones, and we'll integrate them to a new site, which we're very excited to announce and get out in the news this weekend. And developing more infrastructure. And Josh might touch on that a little bit too, with a sister company that we're working very closely with on infrastructure development. They've got some exciting news that will help us get some early larger scale testing with a really good piece of ground infrastructure. But we've just been rolling out and planning and establishing more sites to get charge infrastructure in, so we can start expanding the capabilities and usability of this electric aircraft fleet as we establish pilot training and private usage at a new site, we have to establish that infrastructure there as well. And we're intending to do that mostly with interconnecting sites. We can't interconnect Perth and Melbourne just yet, but in those two separate regions, we've got a little interconnecting network in each region so that people can fly to multiple places in the electric aircraft and have an easy, safe return. Now, exciting news in 2024 too is our Air Operators Certificate and further fleet expansion. We're in the final stages of acquisition of an established air taxi charter operator in Western Australia, and that has an existing legacy fleet of 2 4-seat and 2 6-seat air taxi aircraft. Acquiring this business will give us some really healthy revenue, and it's a profitable functional business at the moment. It gives us a few more human resources to fold into the mix and reinforce our team. And it's giving us a clear pathway to transition to electric operations in air taxi services. So as early as we can have an aircraft certified and safely operating the sort of air taxi routes that we want to, we can integrate that directly into the market. And that Air Operator Certificate is going to let us move through that stage of our growth very smoothly. All right, let's get up another slide here and talk a little bit about the business opportunity, which is mega. I'm sure a lot of you have done some independent research already on what's happening out there around the world in terms of the AAM market, but just the transition of aviation in general into new emerging technologies, not necessarily this AAM focus, but just a lot of introduced technologies coming into aviation with a heavy outlook for decarbonisation. The electric aviation industry is poised for rapid growth, driven by advancements in technology, environmental concerns, and the need for more efficient transportation solutions. Across Europe and America, companies like Joby Aviation and Archer are making significant strides in both technology and investment, with the sector receiving $4.5 billion or more in investments in the past couple of years. And that's representing only a fraction of the overall capital flow into the industry. There's a lot of investments that go unreported and a lot of things happening privately that we don't have data on. The EU plans to ban short-haul flights, short-haul non-electric flights. So several European Union states, including France, Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, are planning to ban short-haul flights under 2.5 hours that can be replaced by emissions-free transport options, such as trains and electric aircraft, to reduce carbon emissions. Some of those nations have actually enacted on that already. France was the first, I believe, to ban the short-haul flights under 2.5 hours. And that will continue to spread over more regions, really opening up an opportunity for this sector to grow rapidly. No word yet on when Australia might do such a thing. Australia can often be last in line for these sorts of changes. So we'll see how that pans out, but we'll be able to offer that product and service before it's mandated from a government level anyway. The avgas ban in Australia is an interesting one to point out. From 2035, aviation fuel for petrol engines, for typical petrol engines, will no longer be available. That same ban is happening in 2030 in most other regions around the world. So what a lot of people don't realize is most piston engine aircraft still run on leaded aviation fuel. So as they fly around our communities and over built up populated areas, they're just little lead crop dusters sprinkling 1.8 grams of tetraethyl lead per litre of fuel consumed. And as everybody knows, lead is highly toxic and not good to sprinkle on top of our communities. So moving these piston engine aircraft through to new technologies, it has a major health benefit for communities as well. Electric aircraft for defence and pilot training in the UK and US, both regions, the UK and US, along with others, some of the European nations are integrating electric aircraft into their national defence pilot training programs, as well as strategic operations. There's been quite a bit of interesting stuff happening in the US with Beta Technologies, and even Textron Aviation, who is the parent company for Pipistrel, have some electric defence contracts that they're working on and building electric aircraft to service various operations. Referring a little bit to what's up on the screen there, some interesting data from groups like Morgan Stanley and Deloitte, Large investments have flowed into the sector, as I mentioned before, literally billions, and even major aviation companies like Boeing are investing heavily. Boeing has committed 450 million into advanced air mobility company Whisk, which is a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft design. They're additionally, Boeing has pledged to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. So they're one of the leaders on their pledge there. But that just further highlights the industry's commitment to sustainable aviation. Referring a little bit more to the data on screen, Boeing also forecast that 650,000 new pilots will be required worldwide before 2043. That is a monumental number. That's more than double to be able to train all those pilots. That's more than double the amount of training that's happening now in the world. So pilot training is due for huge growth to meet that market demand. Interestingly, about 2/3 of that demand will be in the Asia Pacific region. There's a lot of emerging economies in Asia where millions of people that couldn't afford to fly in the past now can afford to fly. It's an absolutely booming sector, and there's a huge demand and huge growth there for commercial pilots, but there just aren't enough worldwide to service that growing sector. So there's a massive opportunity for Australia that has very good conditions for pilot training. Pilot training cannot be completed in most Asian countries because of airspace restrictions and too many built up areas and weather restrictions. So Australia has a fantastic opportunity to be exporting a very high level of pilot training to service the growth in these new regions. That number, 650,000 new commercial pilots worldwide, represents a training revenue value of about $68 billion in the next 20 years or less. So that's a pretty massive market to tap into. That's only one little sector that FlyOnE is working on. I'll keep that screen up for a little bit, but I might just hand over to you, Josh, for a little to talk more on that front. You've been boots on the ground in the US recently.
Yeah, thanks, Coram, and thank you for everyone attending. It's excellent to see such a great audience and some excellent questions coming through. I've been trying to chip away at it. I have been in the US last month presenting at an electric aircraft symposium that they hold every year up at the Oshkosh AirVenture event, which is a massive fly-in of all general aviation. And it was quite a good turnout. Lots of people really getting into this space now. So it's a lot more traction just in the last couple of years than there have been in the decade that I've been involved with this. So it's definitely a precipice of growth that we're seeing in uptake. We are seen as the leader. That's why they asked me to present on the panel as real activities happening sort of thing, like what is actually happening in the world that's commercial already. And we're seen as the leaders because we have over 5 years experience doing this collectively between Coram and I in operating electric aircraft and profitably, selling charges and supporting customers around the world. So by doing this, by being leaders and somewhat ahead of the US regulations and European too, they see us as a really good reference model for how they can do things, because often the regulators there are slower moving and less industry led like we are here. So we're very lucky to be in a country where CASA is a very supportive regulator. From my background in drones, they were very supportive of early drone adoption too. So we've sort of seen that over the decades that there's about a 5 to 6 year head start in Australia in aviation regulations versus North America, and around 4 or 5 years in Europe too. They're only slightly ahead of the Americans. But yeah, and one thing I wanted to share in light of this is that we actually have a lot of interest being the operators of some of these leading eVTOL and large fixed wing aircraft companies that are well funded in North America, where a lot more money is being invested, but they need somewhere to operate them. So they're seeing Coram and what he's done in FlyOnE as a great platform for them to get their aircraft to market through the Australian market. So I think you'll find that we, over the next year or so, will be announcing some pretty exciting aircrafts being operated in Australia first before they are operated even in the countries they were developed in. And we have that benefit of really being a part of that story and helping them with their commercialization, without necessarily us personally having to spend the hundreds of millions of dollars that they've spent on developing their aircraft. So it's a real best of both worlds that we have this head start, and Coram's really laid the foundation for that. So back to you.
Yeah, cheers, Josh. And yeah, Josh has got such an amazing wealth of experience in the sector. He's really been at the tip of the sword for well over a decade, and seen all of this emerge. Like even before drones were drones, Josh was building drones and took that to market. So it's been a powerful resource in seeing how this is shaping out and getting some really good insights from around the world. I'm just going to switch over to another little bit more information on what we've identified in some of the local business opportunities. Pilot training, as I mentioned, is a huge one. Domestically, pilot training could use a hand. It's the pilot training sector is very expensive at the moment, and it's reducing the amount of uptake. So recruitment and cadets are not at an all-time low, because there's also economic development and population growth that are still bringing new people in. But the appetite for pilot training in the private sector is definitely at an all-time low. The costs have increased maybe 30% or more in the past 3 to 5 years. And it's easy to blame COVID, which everybody quickly does, but realistically, there's a lot of factors. There's a lot of reasons why this is changing, and no small part of it is fuel. The fuel price has changed about that amount in that time frame as well, and just the general cost of doing business has really changed in the past few years, particularly at the metropolitan airports like Moorabbin and Jandakot, where the cost of just operating at that airport in any capacity has risen considerably. And all those costs are being passed down to the end user, the cadet pilot. They're going on to HECS debts, or they're coming out of pockets of parents that are trying to help get young people into a career in aviation. So a big part of what we're doing is trying to help the domestic pilot training industry, lowering the barrier to entry by introducing these new technologies. But because their operating costs are so spectacularly lower than a traditional aircraft, it also gives our business more margin. So not only can we be more competitive than a traditional flight school and give more value to the customer, but we're also making more money than a traditional flight school. So everybody's having a better win, and we're enabling this new technology uptake. So we're doing a lot of work for the domestic pilot training space, and we're really doubling down on that next year with the new site that we're setting up in Victoria, which will be a major hub of pilot training, and definitely our hero location for the near future. To really ramp that opportunity up. Now, as a part of that is the international pilot training opportunity that I mentioned before. Australia has always been a good exporter of pilot training, particularly in Western Australia. Some very large companies, Singapore Airlines and China Southern, operated massive flight schools in Western Australia for a long time. China Southern have changed tact, and they wrapped up with COVID. COVID put a real pinch on them, and they wrapped up their operations in Western Australia. But Singapore Airlines still does do all their training, well, not all, but a fair slice of their training in Western Australia. For the reasons I mentioned before, it can't be done in the airspace in Asia, and the weather and the space that we have in Western Australia is excellent pilot training framework. It's a really good space to be completing pilot training. And because CASA is such a well-recognized and well-respected global governing body, pilots trained under the CASA regime are well-respected and well-accepted worldwide. So we have this powerful tool that I feel is being very underutilized at the moment, which is our big, beautiful empty sky. Could be doing a lot more international pilot training and tapping into that new emerging growing market. So we're pushing into that very hard. The new site that we're activating in Victoria, which will get a press release out this weekend. The reason I can't talk too much about it is because I promised a media outlet that have exclusivity and they'll do their release on Monday. So I'm just keeping playing down the details a little bit so that they can get that news out on Monday, and then we'll do a press release and get a mail out to all of the investor EOIs as well. But that site is very exciting. We'll be able to really ramp up international and domestic pilot training there. So aircraft sales is a big part of what we'd like to enable as this market develops and grows and more people start getting comfortable and excited about flying electric because it's so great. We'll start to sell more 2- to 6-seat electric aircraft that we already have in our pipeline from these new manufacturers that I mentioned earlier, and I will show you some slides of those aircraft shortly. But some interesting facts and figures. In Australia, there are close to 9,000 2- to 6-seat aircraft out there already. A lot of those are used in pilot training. Some of them are used in air taxi, but a great many of them are just private operators using those aircraft. Now, the average age of those 9,000 2 to 6 seat aircraft in Australia is almost 40 years old, 37.8 years to be exact. So over the next 10 to 20 years, a great deal of those aircraft will be replaced. They'll be exceeding their usable life. The sort of maintenance and upkeep on them in terms of the airframe will be no longer economical. And the cost of fuel and the emissions they emit will be unacceptable to a lot of people. So we'll see a rapid change of adopting new types of aircraft and new propulsion systems with all of those private operators and commercial operators in that space. So just to give you a bit of an idea, at the average price of these emerging aircraft and around about 9,000, that represents somewhere close to $18 billion worth of aircraft sales in the next 20 years will occur in Australia. Somebody will be there to take advantage of that market transition. And we hope that the majority of that market share is ours. So, and that's what we're working very, very hard for. Air taxi operations are an excellent one as well. Air taxi already is very healthy in Australia. There's a lot of on-demand private charter occurring in Australia, over 437,000 hours flown in 2020, which is the latest data that I can access without spending heaps of money. And the average amount of revenue from that is about $480 million. So that's the private charter and on-demand air taxi market already in Australia. That will definitely grow with these emerging technologies in the AAM sector, which is tapping into a new low-altitude economy that doesn't exist much at the moment. There's not a lot of short-range, quick, easily accessible air taxi options now, although we do offer some of those very specifically short-range, easily accessible air taxi options in Western Australia with our primary route from Perth to Rottnest Island. But we'll be looking to build that economy and capitalize on that opportunity as these nicer aircraft start entering the marketplace and we activate more of these sites to interconnect places that might be a 2, 3, 4 hour drive. We can get passengers there in 40 to 60 minutes through the air with a really beautiful transport experience. Flying is amazing, particularly at low altitude where you get to see a lot of the landscape and geography around. So it's quite a beautiful experience, and we're hoping to really build that sector and turn those 437,000 air taxi hours into 500, 600, 700,000 air taxi hours as we grow out this sector. And that's what a lot of the other, so these manufacturers that are achieving all of this investment and doing all of their development, that's exactly what they're working towards as well. And just on that note, quickly, there was a good news release, which we can shout out to Josh's point before, the US looking at other regions to do early testing of their aircraft for certification. One of the biggest developers in the space, Joby Aviation, have just recently filed for the certification process in Australia with CASA. And we'll be reaching out to them to see what we can do to help and enable that in any way. And fingers crossed, a partnership could emerge. We'll see what we can do about that.
And I've been I've known Joe Ben for over a decade. He's been at it, so it's been quite a long journey for him as the founder of that. You know, only $1 billion+ and 1,000 people working on it later, but they're getting there, so it's close. And
one of our advisors too, Bill Ty, is a friend of Joe Ben's too. So we've got hopefully we can get in on at the ground level there and really help them in Australia and just accelerate and advance this whole market opportunity. The next one, I think we might be due for a new slide, is, so charge node site acquisition and management. So a lot of the regional airports out there have not had much attention for a very long time. It's surprising to see just regional airports that are just immediately out of a metro area are very often just an old tin shed and one naked light bulb and a little fuel tank. And that's about the extent of their infrastructure. To enable this advanced air mobility network and that's emerging, this market space that's emerging, these airports need a little bit of an upgrade. We need to make things more customer centric. We need to make them a pleasant site to arrive or depart from for an air transfer option. So a big part of what we'll be doing is, as well as looking to enable charge infrastructure at these sites, we want to upgrade the facilities and just make a really nice piece of infrastructure or a terminal as well. So we'll be integrating wherever we can, and we'll have it at this new next site that we'll announce on the weekend. we'll have a really nice showcase version of this, which will be a smart hangar, which is a term originally coined by Josh years ago, and I've hijacked it. Thanks for that. Which is just a nice modern hangar design where things are aesthetic, comfortable, but the smart hangar itself is a renewable energy collection and storage facility. So the roof obviously covered in solar panels, and we're very fortunate in Australia to have a lot of solar energy falling on the ground all year round, even in the cooler regions. And we collect and store that energy to then power the aircraft. In a lot of cases, fully. We would be able to operate completely grid independent without having to tap into grid energy at all to operate the comings and goings of aircraft, pilot training, and power the airport and the hangar and other hangars. In some regions that are less favorable with the solar energy, we might need to have some grid tie and to back the system up. But grids everywhere are getting cleaner by the day. There's constantly new renewable energy projects going in around Australia. So we're excited about how clean our energy will be in the future to then continue operating in this capacity renewably, but we'll be putting in infrastructure where we quite often don't need to connect to the grid at all. We've got a very good showcase of that going in at Rottnest Island imminently. We're trying to get the last of the paperwork across the line, where we'll have a completely grid independent solar collection and storage piece of hardware there that collects solar energy all the time. And then when we fly over to Rottnest Island, we'll plug in and recharge independent of the grid and then fly back to the mainland with a full battery so that we've just got more safety options. We can technically fly to the island and return without charging, but we'd be returning with limited energy, which doesn't give you many safety options if there's a problem at your destination airport, which we try and always put ourselves in an absolute minimal risk safety window. So that's a big part of what we're doing, and as we roll out these new sites, is upgrading them in every way we can so that we can make this a really nice customer process as well. We'll probably duck back to this slide in a little bit, but I want to show you some of the aircraft that we have in the pipeline. So we'll cruise back to some of those maps shortly, but the Pipistrel Alpha Electro, which you would have seen in a lot of our content, we've been flying a little fleet of these around for years. They are absolutely fabulous. 2-seat, perfect sport trainer aircraft, very good recreational aircraft, very high quality, very comfortable and nice to fly. And that's been in the marketplace in Australia since 2019. The next cab off the ranks, which is likely going to be the Air One, pictured there on screen, is a vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, does not require a runway. And it will be... It's a little bit hard to say. There's still some framework being formed around this, but we're expecting that will be in the general aviation category as an experimental aircraft for private use with some sort of vertical lift endorsement, which doesn't quite exist yet, but we'll be working very closely with CASA on that quite soon. Hopefully next year we'll have a pre-production model of that in early testing in Australia. So we've got all of those dominoes in place. We're just ready to push them over with a couple of extra little pieces we need to get in place there. But we've got a healthy pre-order of those, quite a few in the first 100 of those aircraft. So we'll have those very early on in the global market. The next aircraft in the pipeline, we have a pre-order of multiple By Aerospace 2-seat long-range trainers. That's the one you'll see on the left. It's an American aircraft. By Aerospace are a fantastic development company based in Colorado. They've been flying this for years and are in the final stages of certification with the FAA. They'll have their final design type ready to go to scalable manufacture. They're on track to complete that this year after many years of hard work seeking certification. They're just about to tip over the edge and go to scalable manufacture. We've got a few of those ordered primarily for our training fleet. They will be registered in general aviation, so they technically could be used for air taxi, but they're only a 2-seat aircraft. So we could only be air taxing one person at a time.
So releasing the 4-seater soon after those. So
yeah,
in the pipeline.
So then immediately after this aircraft goes to scalable manufacture, By Aerospace will be working on the 4-seat version of that, and they'll roll that out hopefully shortly after. Once they get their initial type certification, it's very easy for them to then progress that onto the next model. So we're sharing a lot of components and design elements. So that's a very exciting aircraft that will fly for practically about 90 minutes in the air with plus reserve. So that will suit all pilot training up to the level of PPL and beyond. Very exciting aircraft that will make a pretty large impact in the training sector. it's got some really good numbers that outperform a lot of its competing aircraft in that marketplace. The next one along, the Australis hydrogen electric hybrid is a Australian, some of you might have heard of Australis. They're an Australian developer, and they're about to do their H2 testing on a smaller aircraft design single prop very, very soon. They've got some powered testing on the ground coming up later this year, and some air testing scheduled next year for a hydrogen electric hybrid aircraft, which offers some range extensions and payload increase by being able to squeeze more energy on board with both battery and hydrogen stored energy to get a little bit more weight off the ground and get a little bit further. So as we step out of the training space, we need longer range and higher payload capabilities, and hydrogen might be a solution that steps in there. We really like what Australis are doing. They've made leaps and bounds, and being based in Australia, we're really excited to be able to support local economy and local development there. So we've got our sights set on the Australis, and we really hope to be integrating 15-seat hydrogen electric Australis to our air taxi network as early as they're optimistic for 2026, and we're optimistic for them. We'd love to be integrating at around that time. Next one is, as we mentioned before, the 4-seat by aerospace aircraft. Its timeline will probably be a little bit after the Australis, and then that can be a practical air taxi service aircraft, as well as also very useful in pilot training, where now multiple cadets can be in the aircraft for training missions, which is a common training mission that's flown in current 4-seat aircraft. And we've got a considerable amount of 4-seat air taxi ops in Western Australia right now, so we'll integrate this aircraft directly in that, replace our Cessna 172 fleet with this amazing aircraft, and we can start operating off fully renewable energy at our grid independent sites that we've established in these key regions. The next aircraft, which we're extremely excited about, they've got a lot of work to do, I'll be honest, but their design is fantastic. It's one of my most favorite designs of all of the electric aircraft in the world. The Electron 5 has a big, beautiful payload of around 500 kilograms. It can fit an EU standard pallet in the doorway, and it's very, very comfortable aircraft. Having the props on the rear will make it even more quiet. Electric is already considerably quieter than a traditional aircraft, but getting the props behind you makes it that much quieter again. The canard wing design means it's very safe, very hard to stall, very comfortable. It has huge windows. The customer experience in this aircraft will be out of this world. It'd be very, very visually spectacular, very, very comfortable, very spacious. And the design, the high aspect ratio of the wings, and the very sleek design, the retractable gear, all of these elements are making it fast and efficient. So it should have a very, very practical range of 500 to 700 kilometers with a healthy payload of 3 to 5 people. So we're pretty excited for this aircraft, and they are making good headway. They're based in the Netherlands, but it's longer along our pipeline timeline because they do still have a lot of work to do. But they have flown a scale model prototype 2-seat aircraft of that airframe, so they've got a lot of good data, and they've proven this design is viable. They're just working through the process of getting it to scalable manufacture and getting through their certification processes too, which some of you may know is no small feat. So it's hard work for these manufacturers to get through. All right, so back to our timeline now. On Birchal's advice, don't attach too much meaning to those dates in the timeline, those years. This is all projections and estimations. The manufacturers are doing their best to get these things to market, but there's a lot of challenges that they have to work through. So it's just a mere indication, those years. But we're already well into this timeline of getting these amazing aircraft into Australian airspace with the Pipistrel Electro, and then all of our agreements to start advancing through these amazing airframes as they come to market. And I'm just going to drop back to my script a little and see if I've forgotten anything important on there, because I did go right off script there for a bit. But no, I've pretty much got through most of it. But I did want to duck back a little bit to something I forgot to bring up before, which is just our intended location. So for years, I've been doing very detailed market research about all the current air operations in lots of different regions in Australia, trying to identify the most viable places to initially roll out electric services. As many of you will know, electric aircraft, just like electric vehicles on the ground, have a modest range. They don't have the endurance that we've become accustomed to from the legacy aviation sector. And that just means that we can't service as wide a market with electric aircraft. But the market that we can service with the endurance that is available is still absolutely enormous. So much to bite off and chew that we'll have to very incrementally roll it out. There is, like I said before, just hundreds of thousands of air taxi hours occurring right now, and a very large portion of those can be transitioned to electric. It will take different aircraft to service different routes, just like they do now. Sometimes we fly our 4-seat Cessnas on air taxi routes. Sometimes we fly our 6-seat Piper Cherokees for longer, more comfortable routes. And it'll be the same thing with electric aircraft. There'll be different horses for different courses, so that as the old saying goes. So on that map, all of our green locations are our decarbonised current air taxi services with the legacy air taxi business. And the blue locations are the ones that we've fully activated electric and have the initial electric aircraft operating on. And we'll be expanding those as early as we can with the greater capability electric aircraft as we can bring them to market, get them tested and certified, and make sure they're safe and comfortable to operate in these little networks as we grow them out. All of the grey locations are some of the key locations that we've identified good market opportunity, not just uptake of the aircraft services themselves, but renewable energy capture, storage, and resell, not just to the aviation sector, but reselling that renewable energy capture and storage to the rest of the airport and the communities around the airports. So not all of those dots are primarily focused on aviation. Some of them are focused on energy capture and storage with aviation as a bonus. So there's a really rich matrix. Every site is completely different in terms of what can and will be done there, whether it's air taxi or pilot training, a combination of both, or just occasional air taxi with local energy supply and storage. So really, that's been one of the hardest work parts of the business, is because every time we go out, there's no template for it, right? We've got to work very independently. Some of the airports are privately owned, some are government owned, some are council run. So every arrangement's unique. But we've got a few more people in the team working on that now, helping me with that sort of stuff. And that means we can scale out and start getting into more sites simultaneously. That pretty much brings me to the end of most elements of the businesses I wanted to touch on. And how are we going for time, Eva? Is that?
Thanks so much, Coram.
Have I exhausted everyone yet?
Oh, that was incredible, that presentation. I'm just so excited about the future of this industry and what you guys are doing to be pioneers in the space. Thank you also so much to Josh, who has answered a number of questions. Thank you to the audience, very engaged. And there are some really, really interesting questions that are being asked. Josh has already jumped in and he's answered a bunch of these, which is great because we want to try and answer as many as we can in the time that we have. So I'm going to start by just asking you, Coram, some of the questions that are still open. And if we can get through all them, we'll revisit some of the questions that were also answered, but we'll just do what we can in the time. And then I'll let this amazing audience know how else to get involved in this campaign. So without further ado, let's kick off with David's question. Coram, are you working with Skyports?
Yes, absolutely. I've got a relationship with Clem. We touched base years back when I saw his early efforts, and honestly, a business like Skyports, and we need each other. So Clem's doing a lot of work on more site establishment. While our focus is not exclusively fixed wing, definitely it's majority of what we're working on is fixed wing. And then the majority of what Skyports is looking at is eVTOL or STOL, and servicing a very metro market. So I like that market, but that market is, and it's no secret, and I've seen Clem communicate a lot that there's a bit of a long timeline for that market. It's going to take a long time to develop, and the aircraft aren't in the air yet. Whereas there's an immediate present market opportunity now for this existing certified fixed wing aircraft to address a massive demand in pilot training, which is not just right now. There's the massive demand in pilot training. It's been around for years, and it's been underserviced. So we're taking early action on that. But yeah, we'll have lots of crossover with Skyports, and hopefully, like, a rising tide raises all ships, which is a saying that I know Josh likes to use. The more that we can work together to enable more interconnecting services, it's going to, if Skyports has a site and FlyOnE has a site that connect, we've just halved our cost of resources to establish another route for the consumer, right? So the more we can work together, the more services we can activate sooner. So yeah, we'll do our best to work parallel with Skyports and any other emerging operator in Australia.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Next question is actually about what's happening this weekend at the EV exhibition.
Yeah.
Do you want to just let us know how FlyOnE is getting involved and any way that anyone attending can see you in action?
Sure. Yeah, the Melbourne Electric SUV Expo is on this weekend at the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre. That's Friday, Saturday and Sunday, the 9th, 10th and 11th. They did ask me to bring an aircraft. We have done it before. I did take an aircraft into Perth City once, but it's a major pain in the bum, and I don't want to do it again. It's very difficult, as you can imagine, to get a full-size aircraft into a convention centre. So we didn't do that this year round, but there will be an eVTOL on display, the XPeng eVTOL flying car. I know some people hate that phrase. I don't mind it, but it will be on display. So very worth a look. And I'll be doing a few panel presentations on multiple days and a couple of keynote speaker positions as well, going over some different content to what I've presented today. So it'd be worth checking those out if you're there. And we have free tickets available for anyone that wants to come along. We've got up to 50 free tickets a day for any of the EOI investors. You probably would have seen some automatic invites come out already with the link to activate your free ticket. So please come along. And if you've got any more questions, you can ask me in person. I'll be there all days, and I'll be at the AEVA, the Australian Electric Vehicle Association stand. I'll just be hanging out there. They've got a bit of cool stuff on, and we work with them a little bit as well. So when I'm not on stage, I'll be at that stand, and come and find me and ask some questions. But come along to the show. It'll be amazing. There'll be all the manufacturers will have their latest and greatest electric vehicles there, which is always great to check out. There's test drives. There's the XPeng eVTOL on display. That'll be the first production model eVTOL on display anywhere in Australia. So pretty cool to check out. Please come along. No cost.
Very cool.
And we've got a growing number of questions, so we'll try and shotgun through these last few to make sure we answer as many.
Yeah, sure. We'll start. We've got a few questions about pilot training. First about the licensing. So a question around whether electric pilot training and fuel pilot training have interchangeable licenses, and then alongside that, are the flying hours on ICE equivalent to electric flying hours?
Yes, 100%. So from CASA's perspective, there's no difference between your electric pilot training and combustion engine aircraft pilot training. The best way to think of it is if you learn to fly in a piston engine aircraft, you still have to learn a different type to fly a turbine engine aircraft, and your flight hours are the same. You're just learning a different, you're getting on type on a different piece of technology. But in terms of the aerodynamics of flight, your general understanding of the physics of flight, all of your communication and air law is all 100% the same. So it's no different to learning to fly. There used to be two-stroke planes. There's not many anymore, but that used to be a different propulsion type, and then you just fly other aircraft, and there was no compromise in your learning trajectory. And it's the same with electric. We're actually expecting that in a couple of decades, there might not be many piston aircraft at all anymore, and it might only be all electric primary flight, and then you'll move on to gas turbine engines that'll be running on maybe sustainable aviation fuel or other fuel sources, but definitely no compromise in learning electric at all.
Amazing. A quick follow-up question on becoming an air taxi pilot. Do you have any further information on how to do so in New South Wales?
Yeah. Nothing I can throw you to direct you to right now, but stay tuned to all of our socials. We will be recruiting. We've got some change and growth in the business, and we've got more aircraft acquisitions on the whiteboard. So we will be getting into more areas, and we will have air taxi operator opportunities, both equity opportunities and just commercial pilot roles that we'll be hiring for. So yeah, stay tuned to all the socials, and we'll no doubt be putting out some different notifications when the time comes.
Sounds great. A question on whether air taxis are going to be incorporated in the current ATC network, or will a new one be created for it?
So say that again.
Are the air taxis going to be incorporated in the current ATC network, or will a new network be created?
So I imagine it'll just integrate it into the current. There seems to be a lot of, it depends on the airspace a lot. So when we say air taxis are operating right now and have been for many, many years. They're just not electric. There's air taxi services in both rotorcraft and fixed wing happening all day, every day in many, many regions. So most of the electric aircraft that we're introducing will operate like traditional petrol aircraft. They just don't make as much noise or cost as much money. So they'll fit within current framework and air operations straight away. There will be some of the business, and this is where something that Skyports is working on a lot. They're looking at very new types of aircraft that will operate in very new types of passenger transport airspace that wasn't traditionally used for passenger transport, and that will need a lot of new framework and regulation around it. But again, to take advantage of more immediate market opportunity, we're focusing on aircraft that can just directly integrate into current air operations without any wild changes and start to replace these legacy aircraft straight away.
Thank you. 2 questions around the footprint in Australia. Someone's asked, what about Tassie?
Yes. Sorry, Tassie. I know you were chopped off my map a little bit there. Look, we'd love to service all areas. Absolutely. If I had my way, if Musk gave me a call and wrote me a check, I'd put electric aircraft in every town and city around the world. But we have to focus on market opportunity, and that means market volume. So initially, all of our early ops will be close to high population regions where we can access more people for pilot training and more people for air taxi services. But I love Tassie. I personally love Tassie. I like to holiday there. I did a really wonderful drive all around Tassie a couple of years back and just fell in love with the geography and the landscape and the seafood. It's a really, really wonderful space. I'd love to have operations there, but we need that critical mass of human beings, and it's tricky in Tassie. The population just doesn't have that volume that we'll need for early operations, but we will get there, I promise.
Oh, great to hear. And there's a few great questions. I'll try and dive through these as quickly as possible. First up, is the Northeast Vic proposed site in Albury?
No, but I hear there's some empty hangars in that area lately. No, it's not, but we will be exploring that area a little bit more now. There's a lot of upheaval in that little area with the changes at Rex, so there might be some good business opportunity there. We haven't had time to explore it yet. We've been flat out with this raise, but we'll start looking into that space and see what we can do. That's a really great region for flying, and why Rex have done a lot of their training there is the weather's very stable, and there's a lot of good solar energy collection and storage opportunity there too. So it is a high value site. It wasn't on our list because of the competing legacy operators in the region, but now that that's changing, it might move up the list a little bit.
And we've only got time for one more question, but I do encourage anyone else that's asked a question, if Josh doesn't get round to giving you an answer right now, please register your interest in the Birchal CSF campaign. From there, you'll have multiple opportunities to engage directly with Quorum and the team, and ask some more questions there, which they're so happy to answer. And as you can tell, Quorum's very passionate about what he's doing here. But the final question, what do you see as the main driver to switch from existing air taxis and aviation over to electric?
It will be, unfortunately, the main driver will be economics. I've been in the market for a couple of years now and really market testing with the existing operators to see what their motivators are. I had hoped that the emissions reduction and noise reduction and raising the customer experience would have been greater motivators for existing operators. What I've discovered is a lot of the legacy operators, their only motivation is economics, and all those other great things down the list for them. And that's fine. I get it. They've got a system that they know and trust and they're using at the moment with their legacy aircraft. But that economic driver is getting more and more profound all the time. Their cost of operations is out of control on legacy aircraft, and that will be there'll be enough of a pain point there to start pushing them over to transition from existing operations to emerging technologies. But just on that point quickly, my initial business plan was to get out and work with a lot of the established operators and start helping them transition to these emerging technologies. And they're very, very resistant to change, as a lot of people are, and not ready to pivot yet. The economic pain wasn't yet enough for them to look at new options, which is why we've started bypassing that. We've started our own air taxi operations. We're building our own flight training facilities, because if we wait for the existing legacy operators to start getting some market uptake in this new space, we'll just miss out. We'll just miss out on opportunity. And I don't want to wait years. I don't want to have a decade rollout time. We've got the opportunity to get in the air now with these amazing aircraft. They work today, so there's no reason to wait. So we'll bypass those legacy operators, and instead of waiting for them to get an appetite for the new technology, we'll just continue to prove it in the market and offer it to new customers, and they'll come along eventually.
Thanks, Coram. What a great note to end on. You know, the time is now and you have the first mover advantage. So thank you so much for your time today, both Coram and Josh. It's been such a pleasure learning about what you're doing, and it's very, very exciting to be involved. So for everyone listening, thank you so much for your questions. The expression of interest campaign for FlyOnE is live until next week, when they do launch their offer and start taking investments. So if you haven't already, please jump into the Birchal platform and check out their company profile. More information will be available from next Tuesday. All details of the offer document. I know there's been a few questions around valuation and what the terms of the offer are. They will all be available, and if you jump online, you'll have first access to that come Tuesday when the private offer is launched. Once 48 hours pass, that will be a public offer as well. So again, there are opportunities to get involved. Any further questions, please, again, jump into the Birchal platform and reach out to the founders directly. They're so excited to answer as many questions as they can from you. Thank you so much for your time. I'll share this recording later on today, so look out for that as well. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Coram. Great work. See you later. Thanks, everyone.